The full episode is now available on Patreon and YouTube memberships. Please see the link in the description for more details.
Speaking of Star Wars, a fellow YouTuber and friend of the channel, Dragon Demands, had a question that he wanted us to address. He says here, saw your video privately. 7 months later, do you still think George is fuming with no chance of reconciliation with Ryan Condal? Or are the Star Wars I hate Kathleen Kennedy types overblowing the situations? Most channels are saying they're both right. In regards to George and Ryan Condal patching things up, I hope so, but I don't see it happening.
I mean, I hope so, but I don't see it happening.
Because
I mean, if George has held a grudge this long, as long, as recent as the Collider interview, like I don't think he's going to get any better, and he's just going to move on with his life and start thinking about Dunk and Egg.
Can I give you my timeline of events?
Okay.
Because I briefly covered it in my video. So I think it was in 2023 where George put out a blog post where he went to the UK and he sat down with Ryan Condal and the writers team for 2 to 3 days trying to iron things out. And I think he walked away from that meeting thinking he made some progress. He goes back home, almost a year passes, he's getting some rough cuts of the episodes. And so far, he's watching episode 1, 2, 3, and 4 in rough cuts. Okay? Because George did like the first half of season 2. Then he starts getting in rough cuts episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8. And he's like, what the fuck is this? This is not what we discussed. Let me turn your attention to one thing to also prove my point. So when Rian Johnson made The Last Jedi, Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, was vocally on set and off set saying how he doesn't agree with Rian Johnson's choices. Of course, as we all know in The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker dies. If you go, Preston, I'm going to try to find it for you right now. If you go on YouTube and you look up The Last Jedi premiere, where Rian Johnson is with Mark Hamill and they're together, Mark is visibly upset and astounded. And he looks at Ryan Johnson like he's about to kill this guy. My personal theory is when Mark read that Luke was going to die, he complained, and Ryan said, no, Luke's not going to die. Don't worry about it. And then Mark saw the film for the first time when it was completed at the premiere, and he was shocked, he was hurt, he felt lied to, and I think that's the emotion he's portraying on his face. And I think that's exactly what happened to George. George sat down with these guys, and they assured him that they weren't going to do this, or they weren't going to do that, and they were going to follow his ideas. And then he left feeling good about that. And then months, maybe a year down the line, they just dismissed everything I said. Okay.
I think that's a perfect example of something, because, like, let's go back to The Last Jedi, okay? Mark Hamill didn't like the movie for a completely different reason than most people didn't like the movie. Like, The Last Jedi has a lot of faults to it. Don't get me wrong. But would you rank Luke Skywalker being angry and bitter and dying at the end as a fault of the movie?
No.
Right? Like, the things that are wrong with the movie, like, people were complaining about the argument between Oscar Isaac and his boss, the casino scene being stupid as hell. Like, that's what people had a problem with. Maybe people didn't like the scene of him drinking the milk. They thought that was a little embarrassing. But other than the milk drinking scene, I don't think there was much that was really bad about the Luke Skywalker storyline in The Last Jedi. That was one of the more agreeable parts.
You're gonna get this video downvoted.
Ray rushing
you do this all the time. You always give out these opinions. Get my video downvoted. You fine.
But look, like, if I were saying in my opinion, the thing that sucked most about Last Jedi was the fact that Rey had this build up to something, an interesting gray area that she was building with Kylo Ren, and then they just drop the plot and she races back to the salt planet and lifts some rocks, and then they're like, woo, we won, and that's the end. And I'm like, that's fucking stupid. Like, you were actually going somewhere interesting with this character, and then you decided not to. Like, for me, that's the biggest flaw with The Last Jedi. I don't think there was like the Luke Skywalker stuff was all fine. I don't get it. But the thing is, this brings me back to George. Like, George has his problems with House of the Dragon, and they may be completely different from our problems with House of the Dragon. And yet we think we're on the same team as him. But let's not give ourselves credit. Like, I dislike The Last Jedi for completely different reasons than Mark Hamill. We're only on the same team in the sense that we've disliked the movie, but we disliked it for completely different reasons. So there's no alliance between us. It's the same thing with this George thing. People didn't like a lot of aspects of season 2 of House of the Dragon. I think they're for completely different reasons than George.
That's very fair. By the way, I sent you a screenshot here on do you see it? Look at his face. There's a longer video, and I'll put this up for the audience to see. There's a longer video of it. He looks at Johnson like he's about to fucking strangle him,
fucking kill him. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that Johnson told him some bullshit, and Mark was like, okay. He sees the movie for the first time. Boom.
Let's also keep in mind that Mark Hamill is an actor. He knows what he's doing with his face, and he wanted to communicate that. It's almost like farcical how upset he looks. Like, if it were me, I would have more of a stone face, and you'd see like some subtlety, and you'd be like, it'd be more like, how everyone takes that Ben Affleck meme, and they like, Ben Affleck's face is actually pretty stone, but they like take a very subtle like movement, and they're just like, oh, he's so sad.
And then put a sad song over it.
Yeah. Here he's overdoing it. He's purposely overdoing it. He wants people to see his face like this, but...
My buddy was like, you sure he's not just high? He might probably did some ketamine before he went up. I don't know. I don't think so. To back up my theory a little bit, again, I do believe it's the same situation. George was probably told, like, hey, yeah, your ideas here, George, are great. We're going to implement them. Don't worry. He goes home thinking that. And then he's slowly starting to seeing those motherfuckers dismiss every feedback I gave. The reason I think this is because, again, with George's writer friend Shiran Zhao, who put in their blog, for those who thinks he's disrespecting the show writers, how do you think he felt when they have dismissed his feedback in private?
So here's another thing I need to bring up about this. Okay. And this gets into, because I was doing some serious thinking about why D&D got a pass for much huger transgressions than Ryan Condal.
I'm glad you brought that up. My whole thing is that D&D respected him and took some of his ideas, which translate more into season 6, 7, and 8 than we think they do.
Right. You're right. It may be that D&D were better at managing George.
Yep.
But let's also remember that there's also a different relationship here. When D&D met George and became friends with George, he was a fairly successful writer, but he wasn't rock star.
He wasn't rich.
Untouchable. He wasn't rock star, untouchable God yet, right? So when I'm not saying George might not have been above them, but they were on more equal ground. Mm-hmm. And so when they defied him, and their relationship, when two people meet like that, as closer to peers, they're going to remain closer to peers as the relationship progresses. Now compare this to Ryan Condal, okay? Lifelong Ice and Fire fanboy, essentially comes to George R. R. Martin, his fucking god, and like begs to work with him, okay? And George at this point, has hundreds of millions of dollars, and so that's the relationship now. Now it's peon speaking to the king, right? And so now when the peon defies the king, it's a bigger insult.
It's more disrespect.
Absolutely. Even though I would argue that Ryan Condal's transgressions are much more are minor compared to D&D's, but D&D was seen more as peers because it was a different time, and Ryan Condal is seen as a fucking serf.
I like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because let's remember that George is going to change over the years. He's going to And keep in mind, like, this is what also, like, you know, I've heard George R. Martin bitch about his career and all sorts of stuff, and he knows how Hollywood works. So he once I listened to him speak about Beauty and the Beast. He was the showrunner for Beauty and the Beast back in the late 80s. She ran for 3 seasons, and they told him, okay, well, first of all, Linda Hamilton was leaving the show because of she was having a baby, and they kill her off at the end of season 2. And so now the lead of the show is gone. And so George R. Martin is like, okay, well, you know, Vincent, the Beast, he's going to be really upset. And because, you know, people don't get over deaths that quick, you know, and so we've got to, like, pay proper homage to the fact that, like, you know, Beauty has been killed. And this goes on for a few episodes, and and the ratings start plummeting. And they were plummeting anyway because Linda Hamilton's no longer in the show. And the execs say to him, dude, people are getting bummed out. You got to have the character move on with his life and go on to a new plot. And George R. R. Martin's like, well, that doesn't make any sense, but I'm going to do it. The execs do what the execs do. And he did that. And it didn't help. And the show still tanked and was canceled. But he was told specifically, like, this major thing, like, the show is completely about the love between, you know, Beauty and the Beast. And he's there. And he was told by execs, yeah, cut that off, have him get over it, have him move on. And he did it. Okay. And so another example from his life. Okay. Doorways, which we just watched. Okay. He wrote an original script. And do you remember we talked about this? Remember his original script? What was the world they go to? It was a post-apocalyptic nuclear winter world. His original script. If you get Dream Songs, he has his original script in there. And the original world that they go to is a post-apocalyptic nuclear winter world. And they essentially tell him, this seems really depressing. It was the same criticism that the Beauty and the Beast criticism. Can you make it something different? And he's like, okay, we'll have be a world where there's no petroleum or plastic. And, you know, we all criticized it when we watched it as like, well, they're not really doing anything that's that different. They're like, you know, they go to a bar and they get attacked by some bandits. Like there was nothing significant or special about the world that comes into the plot at all. They're not like, oh, damn it, if only we had gasoline. Oh, if only we had plastic. None of that comes in. It just, they go to a bar and then they get attacked by bandits. That's it. Like, right? It was definitely not as good or as interesting as this post-apocalyptic world. But when execs, you know, you play to your, you know, the execs, you know, metal and you deal with it. So now you're dealing with like Ryan Condal. Like he's trying to please all these different masters. And he makes his choices.
He talks about that briefly. He mentions that in his statement, how he has a responsibility to keep marching on, not only for the audience, the writers, but also HBO specifically. Right.
So I think now, again, I don't think, like I said, I think there are huge mistakes with House of the Dragon season 2. Don't get me wrong. I think he fundamentally doesn't get it. I think the prophecy shit, it means he fundamentally doesn't get it and he doesn't understand good writing. But from the other perspective, like, oh my God, George, like, have you forgotten what it was fucking like? Have you forgotten what it was like to be someone like Ryan Condal? People telling him that, yo, you got to make these changes. Like, you know?
Ryan Condal did say George was being unreasonable, so.
I mean, he was being I think George is being unsympathetic.
That too.
Like, if we're being, considering, like, I know several times in George's life where he made big changes because someone told him to make a change. Like changing the main character of Night Flyers from black to white. You know, he caved on that. You know, all sorts of things that he's caved to in his life. And to not have the sympathy for Ryan Condal, who's put in the same sort of bad situation. Because you know Ryan Condal is put in a bad situation. It's not like Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess are sitting around going, "Mwahahaha, how can we fuck over George and write better than him?" No, they're just sitting there going, fuck, what are we going to do? His source material doesn't have anything here, and it doesn't have anything here, and the execs are going to be like, really? You want us to tear apart another baby limb from limb? Oh, Jesus. Like, you make your fucking choices.
In regard to what Preston is saying, for those of you who haven't read Fire and Blood, eventually Maelor, which is the character that George was complaining about, Maelor is torn limb from limb in a mob attack later on. This will probably happen late season 3, maybe season 4. But because the character of Maelor does not exist, that's not going to happen.